So the attorney for the Fort Hood shooter, Nidal Hasan, now saying that even he doesn't understand why the Obama administration continues to call the murder of 13 people in 2009 a case of workplace violence. Here's John Galligan on with Megyn last night.
Workplace violence is not the crime for which he was charged. It is not a punishable offense under the UCMJ, and it's certainly not an aggravating factor that would warrant the death penalty. Nidal Hasan was charged with mass murder.
Not terrorism?
No. They could have elected to have proceeded along that line, but the government chose not to.
Government chose not to. David Webb, host of The David Webb Show on SiriusXM Patriot and a columnist at The Hill. Leslie Marshall is syndicated radio talk show host. Both are Fox News contributors. Welcome to you. This is a stunning interview. We're going to play a little bit more of it in just a moment. But this is the man, just to remind our viewers, who is defending Nidal Hasan. And David, you have some interesting reasons why you think the government has proceeded with this as a workplace violence case.
Yeah, Martha, there were failures by the top brass in the Army especially, and by the government in recognizing and dealing with Nidal Hasan, who in his speeches, his presentations, his training sessions, made clearly obvious statements about his jihadist tendencies. It was obvious he was radicalized, but they had this protected class of if you say anything against a Muslim, you're going to be called a racist or in some other form. This is fact. And as a result, he got away with it up to the point where he killed 13 and wounded many more. It is the fault of this bad policy that we're where we are, and frankly, it denies those that were murdered and those that were wounded their rightful benefits, because this was an act of war and an act of terror on fellow Americans. He should be tried, convicted, sent to the hell he deserves with a bullet. This is what he is. He's a terrorist. And now we're having a debate. The debate doesn't matter, but the people who raise their right hands willingly and serve this nation, they have paid a price, and so have the wounded.
Leslie, you know, I wonder how many more people have to die for us to recognize that there is a form of terrorism that is present in this country. You know, until we start calling this what it is and understanding the motivation behind it, are we not doing our own people a disservice?
Well, first of all, when you talk about motivation behind it, the legal scholars and experts that I have spoken to, defense attorneys, and I am not a defense attorney, have explained to me that if Nidal Hasan had been tried for terrorism as opposed to mass murder, charged as a terrorist as opposed to a mass murderer, those appeals that his former attorney was talking about, and by the way, his former attorney talking on national television could certainly help, unfortunately, Nidal Hasan's appeal process that he spoke to. People on death row for 20 years and then they're not executed. So the Pentagon and the legal experts that I spoke to on my radio show said that they felt the reason that they did this, that it would be easier for the death penalty, the execution, to stick, that it would be harder for an appeals process because you don't have to go through some of the specificities legally of military law. In addition to that, if we look back on Timothy McVeigh, who I feel was a terrorist, I do feel Nidal Hasan was a terrorist. Both of them terrorists, both of them of different religions, both of them mass carnage. He also was not tried as a terrorist. However, Oklahoma City is referred to as a terrorist act.
All right, let's take a look at one more piece of this quickly, if we can.
I think he feels that he didn't accomplish what he believed was his
So remorse that he didn't kill more people?
Well, no, that he wasn't more effective in getting people to believe that in his trial, I think he really was hoping he'd be able to demonstrate that there are millions of people out there in the world who, like him, believe that American policy is improper.
Yeah, I mean, that was his motivation, David. And if we turn away from it, as I go back to my earlier question, do we do ourselves a disservice as a nation?
Yes, we do, Martha. And to go back to the point Leslie makes about dealing with Oklahoma City, something I covered in depth, versus this is we have a different mechanism in place now. And yes, we deal with domestic terrorism and active violence by Timothy McVeigh through the legal system. We have the option now, when dealing with a Nidal Hasan or jihadists on our soil, to send them off to Gitmo to be interrogated and processed to see who they had contact with, how they were radicalized, because the threat we face from radical Muslims versus a Timothy McVeigh, that is a unfortunate one-off where the radical problem is a
Understood.
global jihad against anyone who doesn't agree with
All
them.
right,
So
all right.
legal experts aside, this is reality.
We got to go. I would just mention on the way out, Brendan Tevlin, who was also murdered by
Yes.
someone who claims that he did it because of his anger over the U.S. action against Muslims, and that one we'll take up on another day. Thank you very much. Good to have you both with us.
Good to see you, Martha.